So here is the diagram showing the stage-wise breakdown of one molecule of palmitic acid. How many carbons are there in palmitic acid? Palmitic acid actually contains 16 carbons. I think the highlighter is not clear, so we will come to the highlighter. Here is highlighter and I will take a red color. Okay. Now, what you see here is a palmitic acid molecule. How many carbons are there? Totally, there are 16 carbons in palmitic acid. And during every round of oxidation, it is removing 2 carbon units in the form of acetyl coenzyme A, as we found in the case of the previous presentation. So how many 2 carbon units are present? If the total number of carbon atoms is 16 and if every round of oxidation removes 2 carbons, then totally how many 2 carbon units are present? You know that it is 16 divided by 2 is equal to 8. That's why it is shown here 8 molecules of acetyl coenzyme A. If there are 8 molecules of acetyl coenzyme A, then how many NADH are produced and how many FADH2 are produced from this round of oxidation? Is it 7 or 8? How many rounds of this beta oxidation are taking place? Is it 7 or 8? You think carefully, you will understand that it is only 7. Because at the end of the 7th round, 2 molecules of acetyl coenzyme A are produced. So 7 rounds of beta oxidation are taking place from 1 molecule of palmitic acid. So we get here 7 molecule of NADH and 7 molecule of FADH2. From where? From beta oxidation. And you know that these acetyl coenzyme A molecules are entering into citric acid cycle. You have studied it earlier, I think in the previous semester. They are released into carbon dioxide and they also release NADH plus H plus and FADH2 and also ATP. This NADH plus H plus and FADH2 enter the respiratory chain, the electron transport chain, and in turn they produce ATP. That is what is going to happen here. And this is from another textbook. The same reactions are shown here. You can see here after first round a 14 carbon fragment is remaining. We are talking again about palmitic acid. See, palmitoyl coenzyme A. We began with the palmitic acid. After first round, C 14 fragment is remaining. After second round, C12, then 10 carbon, 8 carbon, 6 carbon and 4 carbon fragment is remaining. That is broken down into 2 molecules of acetyl coenzyme A in the last round. So you just count how many molecules of acetyl coenzyme A are produced. And from each of this you count the number of NADH plus, H plus and FADH2 molecules also. Here this is a chart of the number of ATP molecules produced. Look here, acyl-CoA dehydrogenase. Remember, this reaction is present during beta oxidation, the first reaction of beta oxidation. It is producing 1 FADH2, but I told you that there are 7 rounds of the reaction starting from 1 molecule of palmitoyl coenzyme A. Beginning with the 1 molecule of palmitic acid, there are 7 rounds of the reaction. Each round is producing 1 FADH2, that's why we are having a total of 7 FADH2. And these 7 FADH2 are together producing 10.5 ATP. Number of ATP produced is 10.5. How? Look here. Just we assume that 1 molecule of FADH2 is producing 1.5 ATP, while 1 molecule of NADH plus H plus is producing 2.5 ATP. So 7 into 1.5 is equal to 10.5. And then beta hydroxyacyl CoA dehydrogenase, actually the third step in beta oxidation, or the second reaction of oxidation, it is producing NADH. one NADH is produced per reaction, and from 7 rounds of reaction it is producing 7 molecules of NADH plus H plus multiplied with 2.5 as is shown here. You see 17.5 molecules of ATP are produced. Then what are these reactions? These are the reactions of the citric acid cycle. I told you just now that the FADH2 and the NADH plus H plus, which are formed from the beta oxidation, enter into the mitochondrial matrix. Such they are formed in the matrix itself, where citric acid cycle is taking place, or we say the Krebs cycle is taking place. There they are transformed into NADH plus H plus and FADH2. You know that from each round of citric acid cycle, 3 molecules of NADH plus H plus and 1 molecule of FADH2 are produced. Which are those stages? Isocitrate dehydrogenase is producing 1 NADH, and alpha ketoglutarate dehydrogenase is producing 1 NADH. Succinyl CoA dehydrogenase is producing 1 FADH2, while malate dehydrogenase is producing 1 NADH plus H plus. And how many acetyl CoA were produced from one molecule of palmitoyl coenzyme A? It is 8. That's why 8 rounds of citric acid cycle, 8 NADH here, 8 NADH here, 8 FADH2 here, and 8 NADH here. Not finished. There is a reaction catalyzed by succinyl CoA synthetase. It is producing ATP. Actually, what is produced is GTP, but that GTP in turn, look here, the GTP produced directly in this reaction of the citric acid cycle yields ATP, and therefore the ultimate product is ATP. We count here as ATP. Since there are 8 rounds, we say there are 8 molecules of ATP produced. Ultimately, how many molecules of ATP are produced from one molecule of palmitoyl coenzyme A or from one molecule of palmitic acid? You add up all together, you will get it 108. Is it the gross yield or net yield? Totally we are getting 108 molecule, but remember, in the activation of palmitic acid into palmitoyl coenzyme A in the cytoplasm, we had spent 2 equivalents of ATP, or we say 1 ATP was utilized and it was transformed into AMP, which means it utilized 2 high energy phosphate bonds equivalent to 2 molecules of ATP. So the net yield is 108 ATPs minus 2 ATPs equal to 106 ATP. Keep it in mind that we consider that 1 FADH2 gave us 1.5 ATP, while 1 NADH plus H plus gave us 2.5 ATP. This is the ultimate yield of ATP from one molecule of palmitic acid. If you get another fatty acid, for example stearic acid, etc., accordingly you increase the number of cycles. And here you can see biochemistry in action. This is a polar bear. They are sleeping for many months at a time. Just before sleeping, they are storing a large amount of energy in their body in the form of fat, and during this hibernation they are just oxidizing this stored fat by means of beta oxidation. And remember, this is producing a large amount of water as well. I think I did not tell you that one. You see, this FADH2 and NADH are bearing hydrogen atoms. At the end of the reaction, the hydrogen is combining with oxygen to produce water. I think you have studied it in electron transport chain. That means this beta oxidation is a rich source of water. We call it metabolic water. And during hibernation, the water requirement of the animal is met with this metabolic water. Also, there is another example. You might have studied earlier that camel is the ship of the desert, that the camel is storing a lot of water in their hump. That's wrong. Camel is storing only fat. By the breakdown of that fat, metabolic water is produced upon which this camel is dependent. What about kangaroo rat and other animals which are scarcely drinking any water? They are also depending upon this metabolic water. This is another slide showing the coordinated regulation of fatty acid synthesis and breakdown. You might have understood by now that there is a similarity between the reactions of fatty acid synthesis and the reactions of fatty acid breakdown.